I think it's the second Timothy book, and it goes, "I fought the good fight, I finished the race. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, has awarded to me on this day." So even in times when you may feel lonely, you can always think back to that verse. You really aren't alone, it's just in your mind. More physically, you may feel alone, but spiritually, you're always with somebody. My name is Mario, and I grew up I'm in Rockville, Maryland, and so I've been a Catholic for I would say about 8 years now. And I converted to Catholicism in about second grade. And before that, I was a Episcopalian. So basically, throughout my life, I've played soccer, and so I've played soccer since maybe preschool, pre-K. And then just recently, I gave up playing soccer to start running cross country. And so I have one sister. She's going into eighth grade now. And then my mom, she's lived in Maryland her whole life. And my dad immigrated from El Salvador about 25, 30 years ago. That's pretty much who I am. Would you like me to go into any more detail?
No, that's good. That's good. So let's talk a little bit about your faith journey. You mentioned that you started off Episcopalian and then converted to Catholicism. Let's just start with the Episcopalian stuff. What was that kind of like? And then what caused you to switch to Catholicism?
So firstly, we converted to Catholicism. The four members of my family, we converted because my mom, she didn't really agree with the values of the Episcopalian Church as much anymore, and so we just flipped over to Catholicism. And then my dad was also a Catholic before he met my mom. And then specifically about Catholicism, the big difference with Episcopalianism is the saints aren't held in really in any high regard. So saints don't exist for that measure in the Episcopal Church. And also the power of Mary, she isn't really present in the Episcopal Church. Really, the last big thing too is women are able to serve as priests. So in the Catholic Church, it's just men. But in the Episcopal Church, it's men and women. And nuns, I don't think exist either in the Episcopal Church. So it's more liberal than the Catholic Church.
Okay, good. That's some good history there. So what's your faith journey been like? What do you do now that you're Catholic? Do you attend masses? Do you do other activities with the church? What does your kind of faith life look like nowadays?
So now that I'm Catholic, we've been going to church basically every Sunday. That was only interrupted during COVID, when we had to stay home for maybe a year because we were just scared of getting COVID. But for that matter, we attend the 10 a.m. service. And actually, about a year ago now, I started serving at my church, and so I'm an altar server. And so as an altar server, I've definitely grown in my faith because I'm around the Eucharist much more. So as an altar server, I've had to serve basically the biggest masses of the year. And so serving those big masses, Holy Christmas, the Easter Vigil, especially, and then Holy Week, that really puts into perspective how important God is to you. A man to really the faith in general, and especially to the priesthood, because for those bigger masses, the priests really have to prepare heavily, and so that spills over to the altar servers. And so all of us, we're fairly close to God, and we pray all the time. Basically, my whole life, I've prayed nightly, and so I pray basically about what's going on in my life, how I want to improve spiritually, and mentally. And yeah, I think that's my good faith overview of me.
That's awesome. What do you do specifically as an altar server? For
Uh,
those who may not know.
so as an altar server, at least at my church, you may be divided into different roles, but the main roles as an altar server are the cross bearer. And so the crossbearer leads the main procession up during the beginning of Mass. Then they also lead the sacraments, so the blood and the body of Christ during, I don't know specifically what period of Mass it is, but they lead it up. They lead the gift bearers up, and then at the end of Mass, the cross bearer they lead the procession out. And then And then after the cross bearer, there's the candles. And so the candles, they're with the cross bearer at the beginning of mass. They're in the front, side by side, basically flanking the cross bearer, and they lead the procession up. They lead it out of church, and then during the gospel, they come up and they flank the main gospel reading. And after that, there's the book bearer, and I don't know if that's specific to our church, but the book bearer, they come up at the beginning of mass during the number of prayers. I think it's the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed. Then at the end of mass, we have Saint Michael the Archangel prayer. Then there's a specific prayer to our church, which is which is basically a prayer for members to the priesthood. And so the book bearer, they just come up, they hold the books, not the books, but they hold a book with the prayers for the mass, and they do that at the beginning of mass and at the end of mass. And then besides the book bearer, there's the boat which holds the incense. And then there's the thurible. And so the thurible, it's hard to describe basically what it is without you seeing it. But it's like a big brass kind of container. So for that comes up basically throughout the mass. And so that's a very like ceremonial piece. I think that holds frankincense and incense. And so that just helps to basically, I shouldn't speak on this because I don't really know the full meaning of it, but it's like a sign of respect. That's how I view it. That comes to spread incense on the altar at the beginning of mass, during the consecration of the gifts, during the gospel, and at the end of mass. That's like the main portions of time that the thurible comes up. And then the boat, that just holds the incense for the thurible. And so the priests, they put the incense from the boat into the thurible. And so that's what gives the thurible that big cloud of smoke that you'll see when we come up with the thurible.
Okay, awesome. So, is scripture reading a big part of your routine? I know you mentioned prayer every night. Do you have a particular favorite verse or passage from your studies?
So for me, I don't pray over gospel reading, not gospel readings, but Bible verses. But I typically pray the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and the Glory be to the Father. And then I also pray the Saint Michael the Archangel prayer. And so I rotate between those prayers at night. But speaking on my favorite gospel reading, there is a gospel reading that's just outside of good counsel. And so it's from, I think Timothy, I think it's the second Timothy book, and it goes, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, has awarded to me on this day." So if I had to pick, that would be my favorite gospel reading. And and for the prayers, I just stick to those four prayers that I mentioned.
Okay, got you. Is there a specific reason why the Second Timothy passage stands out to you? Does it have any symbolic meaning for you, your life?
So for me, there maybe isn't a lot of symbolic meaning, but I think it applies to my life well. Because one, I like to run, and two, I see things as like a journey. Or so the verse, how it describes that you've basically tried your best and you've done all that you can. And at the end of the day, you finish what you wanted to accomplish. And so that driving factor really behind like that applicable meaning to like challenges in your life. I think that sticks with me because it's really a reminder that God is always with you. He never leaves you alone. So even in times when you may feel lonely, you can always think back to that verse, more really to God in general. You really aren't alone. It's just in your mind. More physically, you may feel alone, but spiritually, you're always with somebody. So I think that just serves as a that serves as a good reminder to me, and it feels pretty just pretty applicable to what I want to do in the future, and I feel like what I've experienced. So that's the main reason why I like that verse.
Now I totally see the comparisons between that verse and your love for running. So I definitely see how that kind of resonates with you, and especially how you try your best to do whatever you can do, and then it's in God's hands. That's a really interesting explanation of that verse for sure. So throughout your faith journey, which started as Episcopalian now to Catholicism, is there like one main struggle and one victory through your faith life that you've experienced?
So I think one main struggle for me, and I think what people uh, who are religious, what they go through, is struggling with if God's real, or not real. And so, like for me, I bounce between that. But really, when I think more thoroughly into it, I always come to the conclusion that even though you may think that God isn't real, the things that happened around you, they happened for such and such a reason that there has to be somebody of really like organizing that, controlling that to make you who you are. And so when I think about that, I always really come to the conclusion that God is real, and He really is always with you. I think that's my main struggle. Then with my main victory, I think being confirmed was a big victory because that was really my entrance into the Catholic Church. Because before that, I wasn't super religious. I did believe in God, but I wasn't very gung ho about it. But now, after being confirmed, I do feel like that I have a better understanding of the scriptures and I have a better love for the church and faith in general.
Okay. Can you briefly explain the confirmation process? What goes into that? And how did somebody become confirmed?
So for confirmation, I have to go back to your first communion because the first communion you take really two years of CCD classes, or you take 2 years of I think Catholic. I think it's like a religion classes in Catholic school. So after you're done with those 2 years, you get your first communion, and then moving on to confirmation, you have to take another two years of classes. And so I know I'm going to jump between first communion and confirmation, but you get your first communion in second grade, and you take classes first and second grade year. Then for confirmation, you take classes during your seventh and eighth grade year, and that just basically interprets the scriptures for you, and it gives you an understanding of being confirmed. But those classes don't necessarily do a good job of really preparing you, in my opinion, but they give you an understanding. And for Catholic school, it's the same process. You take another 2 years of, I think, religion classes, and then you get confirmed typically in the spring. That's what I've heard from some of my friends that have went to St. Jude's. And then for St. Patrick's, that happens in April or May. And so for confirmation, that is you entering into the church as an adult. You are there to spread, to serve, and to protect the faith. That's how I remember it from my teachers.
Okay, awesome. I didn't realize how many steps there were to being confirmed. That's 4 years of classes. You think it was worth it after those years of classes and studies to finally be confirmed in the church?
Yeah, I do think it was worth it, and also I don't think I described the full meaning of confirmation, but a big thing of being confirmed is that as Catholics, we believe that when you're confirmed, the Holy Spirit fully descends upon you. After taking all those classes, it's definitely worth getting the full power of the Holy Spirit. And at least for me, I think I fully appreciated the Mass, which is very big in the Catholic faith, and the Gospels and the Holy Family, and basically the Catholic faith as a whole after I was confirmed.
So, kind of wrap things up a little bit. You've obviously had a long faith journey. It's been lifelong, starting again with the Episcopalian and now as a Catholic. What would you say to people who maybe are unsure about where their faith standing is? Would you encourage them to learn more about Catholicism, learn more about Jesus? What would your message be to them?
So I think for people who are still undecided or they're doubting going into the Catholic faith, or who may need to refine their faith, I think that's a decision that you should make on your own and that you should make after reflecting about, I think, the problems in your life and why you want to be Catholic. I think I would bring them to some of the masses I'm at my church, and then I would encourage them to read the Bible. And I would very much encourage them to begin their process to being confirmed, especially if they're adults, because for adults, your first communion and your confirmation isn't separate like it was for me. It happens at the same time. I would want them to be Catholic, but that's ultimately a decision that they should make because it's a very influential decision. affects you basically in every aspect of your life.
That's a good answer. How has your faith impacted your how does it impact your, habits, how you go about conducting yourself on a day-to-day basis? Is there any faith principles that kind of influence how you act and your habits, thoughts, things like that?
So I think with my faith, I've definitely been calmer, and I've definitely really thought about how my actions when it impact others. And I also think that being Catholic, I have carefree isn't the right word, but I have I have a better acceptance to things that may happen in my life. And to things that would be very disruptive. Those effects have been minimized. And I just think that overall, my faith is like a shield around conflict and around like adversity. So that's helped me to push through certain challenges. And I think that has helped me to treat others better. But ultimately, being Catholic and being religious as a whole, that's something that you have to work on your whole life. That isn't something that you can just practice, practice, and practice, and then one day you're a master. You have to constantly pray, and you constantly have to think about your faith to really build upon it and to, I think, grow a better connection with God. And that's something that everybody does at all levels of the church, from the parishioners to the Pope. That's at least in my opinion.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks so much for taking a few minutes to talk to us, Mario, about your faith journey. You definitely shared a lot of great information. I definitely learned a lot more about Catholicism and the masses and the confirmation process for sure. So I appreciate your time and hopefully we can have you on again soon.
Of course, thank you, Danny, for interviewing me.